I meet a lot of people in the churches who say, oh, Genesis is not an issue. And I say, well, it was an issue for me. And they say, oh, you're only one person. I said, excuse me, the good shepherd leaves the 99 and goes after the... And I tell you now, it's more than 1% for whom this Genesis thing is an issue. And even in the most unlikely cases, it's an issue. I'd like to share with you one story from a capital city that I was flown to a couple of years ago. I won't say which one. And a man from that church came to pick me up at the airport, and it was a full seminar series. So it started on the Thursday night and went through with weeknight meetings into the weekend, including a church service. And when he picked me up from the airport, he told me that the church was excited. They'd leafleted several thousand houses in the vicinity, and they were hoping to draw people in. But he said, if nothing else this weekend, we're really praying for one man. He's the unbelieving husband of a believing lady in the congregation, and he sometimes comes along to church with her and even to Bible studies, but he's very disruptive. Very disruptive. He's always, like on the Wednesday morning Bible studies, he's always asking hard questions, and the people really don't know how to handle him. And so they told me more about that. So I thought, oh, look, I'm so excited with that. Hopefully he'll come along. And they say, yeah, we're praying he'll come along. Then he said, I just need to warn you one thing. There's a fairly large sector in the congregation who really are not at all on side. In fact, they think that you're really about making money, with all the books you bring out and so on. So it took us a long time to negotiate space in the foyer to put out all the books. So we've made a big effort to explain to people, look, we're constantly being bombarded by evolutionary teaching. The only way we're going to be able to counteract that is by getting these materials out. So this church elder said, please just be a little bit sensitive to the issue, and hopefully by the end of your seminar series, everyone in the church will have woken up to the importance of it. So I said, yeah, sure, okay. So anyway, the first night, Thursday night, we were setting up and in walked a man with a big smile on his face, fairly imposing man. He was a man who had presence, if you know what I mean. And I sensed immediately he walked in, there was a tension. And it's like people were aware he was there. And I'll explain to you what he did. He basically walked up to the tables, put his hands on his hips like this, surveyed the books, and when he thought that he had everyone's attention, he said, how's business? You could have cut the air with a knife. When he was convinced he had every eye on him, he went, oh, naughty, naughty, must not say such things. And I thought, that's him. That evening, I presented a talk on geology. And guess who accosted me immediately? Who basically ran up, his face red with rage and fury. And for almost an hour, he just badgered me with questions and challenges. And then, as he started to sort of run out of challenges, he changed tack a little bit. And he said, he spoke with a German accent. He's obviously migrated to Australia after the war. He was in his late 70s, I think, but very fit and energetic. And he said, in Germany, in the war, the Jews were slaughtered in the churches. That's the love of Christians. Here was an issue that had surfaced because we'd finally dealt with Genesis. Genesis was the key to raising this other issue. Now, I don't know what you'd have said in that instance, but what I said was this. I said, Werner, yeah, look, I'm as aggrieved as you are at the bad actions of Christians. And God has warned all Christians in his word that we are to make sure our behaviour is impeccable so that we are a good witness to unbelievers like you, so that our bad behaviour doesn't become a stumbling block. But I said, what's your responsibility in all this? Are you going to let other people's bad behaviour stop you from coming into a right relationship with God? And he was quiet. And I said, Lord, what happens now? And I said, Werner, you've told me what happened in the Second World War. Can you tell me why it was called the Second World War? And he said, because there was a First World War, of course. And I said, but you weren't born then. How do you know there was a First World War? And how do you know when it was? And he was puzzled for a moment, and he said, well, my mother told me, and my uncle, he fought in the war. Yeah, that's how I know. I said, do you know what you've just done? You've just used this very philosophy that is espoused by God in His Word, in this book, that you so despise. It's logical to rely on eyewitness account for our history. And as I've shown you tonight, and as we'll see in the next sessions, if you can come along, we'll see that the evidence in the world today fits with the eyewitness account of history. I say, Werner, like you, I haven't got a clue what happened before I was born, except for the fact that someone who was there has told us, and we can trust what they say if they're speaking the truth. And he was quiet. And the following night, I had been really praying that he would come along, and it was only a few minutes to go, and I was sitting up here, and I glanced up, and there he was in the front row, and I was so excited. I ran out, and I grabbed his hand. I said, Werner, I'm so pleased you came back. Afterwards, we fight again, yeah? And he said, yeah, I look forward to it. But alas, at the end of the talk, I was busy with other people who came up and asked questions. No sign of Vernon. I was very sad. But then one volunteer in our support group came up to me and said, you know that old bloke you were arguing with for over an hour last night? He's just signed up for Creation magazine. He came to every session, and at the end of it, I sidled up to him and said, well, Werner, how much of this stuff has been nonsense? How much of this stuff has been offensive? And he said, none of it. I love this stuff. It makes you think. You know, he said, I sometimes go with my wife to Wednesday morning Bible studies, and I ask them questions, and they couldn't answer them. But here all my questions have been answered. You know what they told to me? They said, Werner, you just have to ask God. You know what I say? How can I ask him if he won't talk to me?